Hello, and heaven high. This is Robert Thibodeau, MayflowerBookshop.com. Mayflower Bookshop's in Berkley, Michigan. I'm an astrologer. It's one of the things I do besides songwriting and selling rare metaphysical books. But I want to talk about what's happening in the stars and the planetary configurations, the planetary geometry. What's going on with this Jupiter conjunct Uranus? And the Jupiter conjunct Uranus is at the end of Taurus. So I think that Tauruses are concerned with their work and money and long-term security and how that perception and activity affects their relationships and friends and spiritual brothers and sisters, or real brothers and sisters. I'm looking at the Jupiter conjunct Uranus, April 20th, 2024, 10:27 p.m., Washington, D.C., how it's affecting the United States. And in this chart, the Jupiter-Uranus falls in the sixth house of health and work, job. Now, interestingly enough, Saturn and Neptune with Mars at the midpoint. Saturn, Mars, Neptune, and Pisces are at the bottom of the chart. So this could be a concern over health, infection, significant deaths. And, it's always a good time to die, The Native American Indians thought that. In the Christian literature, in the Bible, they have, St. Paul says, you must die daily. There's a lot of, like in the men's club, it's about death. But in the feminine goddess woman mother club, it's about birthing. And so the Jupiter-Uranus is the birth of a new social identity and a new cultural heroic. Jupiter's the social identity and group activity and family and friends and what makes you happy, what allows you to feel like you're growing and learning every day. And Uranus wants to accelerate, like in Curative Education by Rudolf Steiner. He's using tropical astrology like I do, by the way. And he talks about Uranus as being a quickening. It's the quickening of the realization of what is health. Like, what if we were never healthy ever, and that we've always been the ego's been sick and the astral body's torn in different directions and the etheric body's withering because of chemicals and pollution but the ego's ill, and we've been dissociated. Either we plunge into our spiritual self, luciferically, Lucy in the sky with diamonds. We plunge in and loosen our soul too much from the everyday reality. Or we harden with eremonic impulses and trying to resist the flow. So Jupiter-Uranus is an acceleration and a quickening of what makes us happy and what makes us feel like we're growing and prospering and socializing and expanding in our etheric body, and this idea of trying to visit the last of the wilderness areas before they disappear, and we go there and we find pollution, right? So it's time that we wake up to a new ecology, a new freedom of equanimity with all nature and animals and plants and birds and trees and water and air, clean water and air. And this is becoming very obvious about the pollution. And I think this Jupiter-Uranus in a loose grand trine with the moon at 29 Virgo and the Saturn at Pluto at 2 Aquarius. It's a little bit loose here, but that is like the moon could tie it together as a trine. And you have like Ceres, like cereal. Ceres is trining the Jupiter-Uranus, and that could be the overabundance of some food, like wheat. Somebody told me, I think I read somewhere, that wheat has an overabundance and they don't know quite what to do, and the prices could drop. So some food prices are dropping and some food prices are rising, and there's a quick fluctuation. And with all this rain we've had and storm, around the world. There's going to be new patterns of growth and flowers. Maybe some new wildflowers. Some old wildflowers are going to come back. So Athena is on the ascending sign of the Washington, D.C., Jupiter, Uranus. Athena in Sagittarius. And this is the rise of smart, wise women in politics and education and forthright, progressive newscasting, And the moon at 29 Virgo in the 10th house, very close to dark moon Lilith at 22 Virgo. Yeah, it has something to do with the virgin whore complex or the play of passion and purity, angel with physically incarnating. Yeah, but the moon opposing the Neptune off 1 degree. I think with that moon up high, that's the acceleration and quickening of prominent women. And I think, a friend, Marianne Williamson, a friend to us all, I think you're going to see her rising in the ranks of like pronounced thinking and like really smart wisdom thinking that can be applied to the material world and awakening the spiritual ecological qualities of human nature, in the everyday life, So there's going to be a lot of that coming up. We'll see if Taylor Swift tumbles or rises yet higher. But she has, I won't get into her aspects for now. I want to talk about Jupiter-Uranus. So the Jupiter-Uranus in Taurus is the Taurus are concerned with work and how it affects their relationships. Gemini are concerned with love relationships and significant others and how that affects their work. Cancer in this chart is in the 8th house, and that's associated with all the planets in Cancer you have. And I mean, if you get an astrology chart, which is really easy to get, you can get it free online or buy an astrology program from Mayflower Bookshop or get one online for your phone. You can see your chart. You should have your chart and the progressions and transits. You should be able to see that. So wherever your Cancer is, whether it's your sun sign, your ascending, or moon, which are the most significant, Cancer is like where you have to let go of something to make space for something new. And then part of you is dying, but part of you is getting born into something more delightful. And Leo in the first half of Virgo are connected with higher learning. As long as you're learning and have plans for the future, you feel alive. And this is the need to go out in nature and the need to like have a simpler diet, like Virgo and Libra. It's really important to lighten up your load so you can fly and that you're not too burdened with, ever since growth hormones in the meat, they put growth hormones in the cows and everything. I mean, there's been a problem with wrong weight, and people throwing their weight around too much. And mad fake blondes with breasts that bang you around. No, I'm not talking about, am I talking about Trump? Somebody said that was Trump. What do you say? That's not, okay. Bad joking around here. My wee little audience. Okay, but the Virgo and the Libra has to do with the lack of humor and the need for joy. And there's not enough humor. I mean, I love that Robert Kennedy Jr. is doing a whole comedy thing. And I think more people should do that in the sense of Will Rogers and Mark Twain and so many others, all American heroes that had a good sense of humor about what's going on, as well as a perception of the tragedy that's going on all the time and how we're not able to take care of like children and the little ones and the nature and that for greed and profit, we're wrecking the world and economically enslaving, into voluntary servitude many people against their will, but they have no other choice. And so there's a lot of, anyway, I didn't mean to get carried away here because we have to learn to accept things the way they are and to see things the way they are so that we can change the way they are into something better. But we have to be able to see things clearly and not take it personally because even the bad guys are just ignorant and deluded and stupid. I mean, who would cause bad karma and hurt other people and make a whole bunch of bad karma and wreck your own future life and lives. If we could feel what everybody feels, we wouldn't be so crazy in this world. And hardened egotism and that acts out of separateness rather than a spiritual unifying principle with a unique expression of the bodies, the lower bodies, our unique expression of this greater sense of wholeness and unity in spirit and God or universal mind or nous or Hermes or, call it what you want, all of it. And then we have a spirit that has the experience of at one-ment often. Can we hold that unifying principle? Can we see the oneness in the spirit within all living things? Even stones and rocks, Can we see that expression? So then the mind and the soul is the mind, psyche, soul between spirit and matter, spirit and form, spirit and body. We can develop our mind through theosophy, Blavatsky's theosophy, Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy, Tibetan Buddhism with Gaelic Rinpoche, Gyatso, many others, Kalu Rinpoche, Neoplatonism and Hermetics, the Kabarian, Manly Hawes' Secret Teachings of All Ages, breathing exercises, the 5 Tibetan rites exercises, Vivekananda, Ramakrishna. There's so many, Yogananda. There's so many we can learn from. And it's good to learn from a bunch of them because they have, all of these people I mentioned in systems have a different way of coming toward your heart-mind. They all come toward your heart-mind in different directions. And you'll be free. Know the truth of the true nature of reality in yourself and others, and you can get free, You can't love another person unless you love yourself. And who is the self? Who am I? Know thyself, and thou shalt come to know the whole world. Know the world, and you'll come to know yourself. Those two have to come together. So the Jupiter Uranus is affecting Virgo in the attempt to find the true aim in life and calling. And somewhere in your chart you have Virgo, and that's your true, whatever house that's in is going to be your true calling. Then we have Libra as finding the right work and job so that we have the right friends. We can support the right friends and have the right friends. Libra is looking for the right friendships that bring about a redemption of the past and a future that's worth living for. It's a future worth dying for and living for. And Libra is emphasizing how important the job is to friends and how important friends are and acquaintances to what happens with your work and calling and your direction in life. Scorpios are finalizing, they're kind of completing in their mind and heart what happened to all their friendships in their life. And they're letting go to try to find a true retreat or hibernation. And they're trying to discover, Scorpios are trying to discover what imprisons them and what frees them, and how they can dream real rather than dream false and not have things really work out for the future, but they're always working out the past, So Scorpio's like occupying the 12th house mostly of self-imprisonment or artistic creativity that frees one. And Sagittarius is coming out of the dream into like, what is the personality and what is the body, and can I love myself, and can I keep learning about who I am and how I can facilitate helping others by helping myself to know who I am. And Capricorns are concerned with their money, possessions, what possesses them, where they're not free, and how they can be how they're possessed with thoughts and feelings and demons, and how they can be freed of the there's no demon and devil outside of like selfishness. When you look at and acting out of separateness, when you look at Rudolf Steiner's representative of man, of the mind stream continuum heart, when you look at Rudolf Steiner's sculpture of the Christos or the Christ between Lucifer and Ahriman, he makes it very clear in a couple places that you need the Lucifer Ahrimanic. Now these are scary terms. We could say Ahura Mazda and Ahriman Mephistopheles. We could say like Lucifer and Satan, but those are scary terms to a lot of people, and people don't understand what they mean. We need yin and yang. We need spirit and matter. We need like the sulfuric forces and the salt forces of contraction and expansion and centrifugal energy, that the Christos, between the inner and outer and the higher lower, is the heart of freedom to awaken with intelligence. The heart has not fully flowered and awakened with intelligence. That's the ultimate conspiracy theory, of which all other conspiracy theories are shadows of idiots that don't have unless you have a heart that's awakened with compassion for all that lives, and a willingness to learn until the whole world's at peace, to keep learning and not sell out and think you've retired. Or that you can make infinite amounts of money and somehow that's going to save you. I mean, money's cool. It's the mind that touches it that makes it dirty or clean. Right? I think, And to meet each other, when the minds meet, we really kind of meet, It's the hearts that meet that make us eternal and forever young. So, Sagittarius is part of the first house, which is the everyday life has to be meaningful and higher-minded. And then the Capricorns have to be concerned with making money in a way that helps the world rather than just making money. And how to give yourself in such a way that you can receive the gift the world has for you. And Aquarius is operating in the third house. Aquarius is surrendering and using, with Capricorn and Aquarius, using everything you have to benefit your career and calling and your higher octave of spirituality. And Aquarius is trying to make brothers and sisters and friends with all life. Pisces is trying to establish the home. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the stillness can interact with stillnesses and roots. Home is where you home in to what matters and what awakens in spirit, the relationship of all matters to each other. So I don't want to complicate you, but Pisces is after good eating habits and home and kitchen, bathroom and bed. You got to work on that. Aries is trying to figure out like what you love is going to totally transform you, and you're going to transform it. And if you want to be, like you have like, well, Pisces, I want to go back to Pisces because Aquarius has Pluto in it. So Aquarians are dying to get born again. He that's not being busy born is busy dying or something like that. And Pisces has Saturn, Mars, and Neptune. And the Mars midpointing the Saturn, Neptune gives us an indication, like we're having very strong indications now and all through June of what's going to happen in 2025, 26, 27 with this Saturn-Neptune thing that's going to happen. Because Mars is midpointing the Saturn-Neptune now. And that is the fear of health problems. It's like unwarranted fears of health problems and money problems and the world's going to die. Somebody came into my bookstore and said, I just found out I'm going to die. And I go, you just found out? Didn't anybody tell you? We all die, but then we all get born again. I'm kind of making light of it, but certainly we want to have some kind of stillness and all-embrace of love and connection and unity and a mind for the thrill and the learning before we pass on from this life. There's a couple things we may want to do. And the first thing is to hold still and take a good look from the stillness. What I refer to in my books as the third ear. The heart is the third ear, the single ear that can hear the truth and hear the music that we should be playing and following. And so the Saturn-Neptune now is an interesting phenomena of like how our home and our stomach and food imprison us whatever we're putting in our mouth and ingesting, right? Alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, medication, how it's enslaving us or freeing us. Is it building for long-term security, or is it long-term breakdown? And we need free healthcare and Medicare and free education, especially at the college technology level, and educational services should be free, and they should be meaningful to not only work to help corporations get richer and the poor get poorer, but to help. I mean, no slight on corporations. I mean, those are human beings too, but you should wake up if you're too rich to try to help people to help themselves. You don't have to give anything away. But there's something wrong with the planet when you have people that are super rich breaking all the rules, and there's no ecology rules for any of the war machine. And we really need a peace machine. We need peace and ecology and harmony between all peoples and nations. And how are we going to do that unless we have somebody who's really smart and wise at the heads of state? We need wisdom at the heads of state. We need a yogi teachers and astrologers and metaphysical, all those subject matters, Steiner and Theosophy. We need all the spiritual people next to every cabinet member in the United States government, so that there's be some kind of honest conversation. And we don't want corporate Trojan horses and soldiers in prime positions for helping humanity and protecting humanity from pesticide. Come on. Okay, we know that. So then Aries is in the 5th house, and Aries is concerned over lovers and what lovers can do to either make you secure in helping the earth be a better place, or falsely secure where the walls get thicker and thicker and you're trying to control people. You know, jealousy is when we don't love the person. Jealousy comes out of fear, trying to control a person for what we want them to be rather than whoever they are. And who are we? Hardly any of us know who we are. So it's really beneficial to create opportunities for learning and giving space to people to figure it out for themselves. And I don't know how to teach that, because I have a tendency of, like, if I see something that I think is true, I'm immediately sharing it and kind of trying to get people to look at it that way. And, I think that the people that are in the mass media don't try to help you with spiritual ideas and new ideas. They're often thwarting. So anyway, so the Jupiter-Uranus takes place, and we've been feeling it for months, but it's really building up now, and we really get whacked with it on the 20th. But I wanted to say that we're really feeling it now. And when this comet, I think it's 12P Pons Brooks, it comes from perihelion on the 21st. And Venus is equals the Mars-Jupiter midpoint or something. It's kind of wild. This is a really good time to find something to fall in love with that's good for you, for a change, for the real change that has lasting changes for the planet and yourself. And even if you're alone falling in love with yourself, it's fine. But the Sun squares Pluto on Sunday the 21st. And I think with Mercury going retrograde, we can't trust that we're going to see the good side of the Jupiter-Uranus. We're going to see a lot of good things that are happening. I'm seeing a lot of good things. But we're seeing a lot of exposure and crazy stuff and mad people. Rudolf Steiner predicted that the number one disease of our modern times would be hysteria, that we would have panic and fear and hyperactive. We'd be way over-energized, and we'd be acting like everything's happening right now and it's an emergency. And then when it all clears, nothing new really happened. Maybe something bad happened, but it's the same old, same old. Maybe something new happened and somebody won $1 billion in the lottery, and it's about to wreck their life, or they're going to go hide. And I mean, how many people benefit from anything, good or bad? We need to learn how to benefit from good things as well as to learn from the suffering. And of course, from my other talks, that the Uranus going to Gemini, Neptune going into Aries, Pluto going into Aquarius, taking place over the next 3 to 4 years, off and on, and already starting. It is intimately connected to, like, the Civil War and the War of Independence and the French Revolution, and oh my God, there's all these things, the Saturn, Neptune, there's all these things. Jupiter, Uranus is associated. There's a lot of planets that are associated. Now, so we've got to not have civil war. We have to, do we need to like have a war between the common people and the kings and queens that run the multimedia industrial complex? I don't know. I hate to see it, but I wish people were a little more friendly and willing to learn, and that we put spiritual thinkers in top positions everywhere to be counselors at the very minimum to people that run the world. So we're going to see, we have this Jupiter-Uranus, but Mercury goes direct on the 25th. When Mercury goes direct, yes. And it's in Scorpio, so there's some shit going down. C-H-I-T. Sat is the eternal Father, principle. Ananda is the ever-changing spirit, opportunity for virtue. And the CHIT is consciousness that arises between the stillness and the moving. The centrifugal and centripetal energy of Steiner's representative of a man, the Christ between the Luciferic and harmonic. Now there's a lot of some people get really carried away with this. Now then there's the Asuras that are just some destructive force that are worse than Ahriman and Lucifer in the anthroposophical Steiner frenzy of fundamental Christianity that they sometimes present by accident. I'm not sure, I don't think Steiner did, because he thought everything was a necessary ingredient and not to be worried about and fearful about, and that we shouldn't fear the future that's coming at us. It's our own karma, and that we could deal with it and make something better happen. We can make lemonade. We can make bread and have things rise. We can have the cross of the sacrifice and the giving up of desire and fear to bloom the rose of immortality and higher consciousness and a resurrected sense of love and truth. And that cross and rose need to go together and not separate. And that was the idea of the representative man, is that the rose and the cross were together. And that's the Christos, is the spirit. The Christ is the intermediary between everything and nothing that I often talk about in all my talks on YouTube and elsewhere, TikTok and stuff. It is this idea of the awakening of the Hermes or the Artemis or the Athena, the great goddess, the Sophia, the wisdom love, the wisdom love that comes between just loving without wisdom or wisdom without love. That's really Lucifer Ahriman. The redemption of Ahriman is truth and more truth, and that you're ever willing to learn, and you're willing to be able to laugh at yourself, how dumb you've been, and willingness to learn, And the redemption of Lucifer is practical compassion and helping people less fortunate than you, and to stop trying to ascend and get away from everything, all the time. A lot of people are always trying to escape and travel and get high and go into ecstasy or they numb out. And so the numbing out and hardening, harmonic, and the loosening and rushing into emotional, like the more you rush into a relationship or anything, the more you're not looking at the shadow, right? So this comet comes on the 21st, which has a 71-year cycle, and it's kind of like the comet, Halley's Comet, like it has this real regular cycle that's lasted forever, and it was here in interesting times in the past, but the basic thing is that if you've got good virtue habits, it strengthens them. And if you have negative habits, it strengthens those. And so when we're in the midst of these eclipses, the Jupiter-Uranus, the Saturn-Neptune, the planetary ingresses into Gemini, Aquarius, Aries, we're talking about an acceleration and a quickening of our good and bad karma. If you're doing the right things, you've got a sense of meditation, yogic, spiritual, quiet, collective self-remembering, and you have a sense of beholding the world around you, and you have a sense of forever learning, and I guess what I'm really saying is that when you have these planetary aspects so intense, that the good and bad karmas multiplied by several times. So it's really important to try to do something right. If you've got a bunch of bad habits, lock yourself up, turn yourself in, get to a hospital or a retreat center where they'll help you. And I think that Mars conjunct Saturn, Neptune during the Jupiter Uranus at the bottom of the chart is a clear indication of Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces maybe having some problems with issues of health or addiction or self-imprisonment through attitudes and emotions. When it comes to Scorpio and Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, I think we're talking about how can we find our little self that fits in with the wholeness, that doesn't harm people and hurt people and doesn't demonize people and doesn't try to live in fear our own self, doesn't demonize or put ourselves down. Fear no failure, court no success, it says in The Voice of the Silence by Blavatsky. So that's what I wanted to say. I think, let me just make sure. The practical realization of ideals. I mean, the Saturn-Neptune is when spiritual and material values have to meet in a co-creative way, like the spiritual materialistic worlds. The great ideals that you hear, some of the great ideals you hear at the better moments of all these presidential candidates. Think of all of them, from all the way back to Jefferson and Abe Lincoln and Marianne Williamson and Robert Kennedy Jr. and all of them, the Trumpster guys, the Biden, when they have their better moments. You think of the politics and money and the practical materialistic science. Science has become a religion that people believe in, but they don't understand what we're doing, how it harms the earth. And we have no watch dogs that help. So anyway, I didn't mean to harp on that kind of thing, but false ideals and inside materialistic fixations, inner and outer hidden materialistic fixations and false ideals, we've over-concretized spirituality, and then a lot of spirituality and religion are escapism and doesn't really directly deal with science and the military-industrial complex or the media-industrial complex or the pharmaceutical-industrial complex or all this profiteering off the little ones. So when we get to Saturn-Neptune, February 20th, 2026, although there's other times where it comes close, and this whole period of time to 26, 27, actually until we get the Uranus trine Jupiter, I think you can, it's an interesting take. A friend of mine by the name of Ray Merriman has a book called Forecast 2024 that goes into his angle of economics and his spiritual angles and material angles. That's kind of cool. I've looked at it a little bit because I always think he's a great thinker, but I have a different way of thinking about it. So I haven't plunged into all the way. I'm trying to give you what I think about these things, and it's always fun to see where he corresponds with me, and we just differ in little things, I think. Okay, so but he's way more into the markets and than I am. I'm into the Tibetan Buddhism and Theosophy and Steiner and the esoteric and how we, and which we all are, by the way, and he is too. I didn't mean that. But I'm trying to get, how can we live a life right now if you don't know anything? How can you straighten it out? And I think that keep a journal and write down all the spiritual things you hear from everybody for a year, and then go read that the following year and see what you've learned. The Mercury retrograde conjuncting Venus on the 19th, it should be cool, man. I think a lot of people are having great insights, and we're trying to see what's going to happen. But it's good when we can be active ingredients. And when Mercury goes direct, I think this whole time period, by the way, in other talks, I've talked about the experience of Christ in the etheric, or experiencing the goddess in the etheric, goddess Natura, and the inner feelings and vital body. I mean, that's one of the great things about being a vegetarian in my case. And it's a really great thing. Many people I know who you can eat whatever you want, but try to eat in a really healthy way and fast occasionally and exercise outdoors and have a little garden and or at least plants and help the little ones that suffer more than you to make yourself feel a wee bit better, because some people are overwhelmed, especially if you're overwhelmed. Help people less fortunate and try to emulate people who are happy, not just materialistically, but people who have qualities of thinking and feeling and doing and loving and creating space that's beatific. We want to try to find those people. And a lot of us, it's very easy to demonize people and throw them away. Very few people work together in a good way. We mostly find mirrors of ourselves. We don't find fellow stars that we can give the right kind of space and share each other's light and not fear the dark that surrounds us. And without dark, we'd have no light. Without light, we wouldn't know the dark as well. All the planets grow in the dark and the light, and there's some mediator between there. And that mediator between the inner and the outer, and the higher and the lower, and the dark and the light, and the right and the left, the forward and the backwards. Yeah. Rudolf Steiner says that kind of more or less cube of space around where our heart is the only place we're really free. But we have to awaken it with the intelligence of the bowed head. The head, the surrendering head that goes in the heart. The Passover from the head to the heart. In the Dead Sea of the thinking, the sense-bound thinking into the heart. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit waxing spiritual here. So one of the things that's interesting is when the Saturn-Neptune does take place, you have Jupiter on the Washington, D.C. chart. Jupiter's on the ascending sign in Cancer. There's a real concern over land, water, and food. At the minimum, it's very intense at that point. And Neptune and Saturn is near the midheaven, and the midheaven is 26 Pisces, and Saturn is at 0 Aries, with the moon at 13 degrees Aries, and at 20 Pisces is Mercury. It's kind of interesting that the Saturn-Neptune midheaven is like between Mercury and Venus, and the moon in Ceres, Serial, right? That's a very interesting thing. And you have this loose, let me see where I don't have my note here, but I wanted to look at Uranus and Pluto, because Neptune and Saturn throughout these years kind of run here and there a midpoint between Uranus and Pluto, which are more or less sextiling it. I mean, I think this could be, if we're prepared for it, it's either something that forces us to all grow up and find, like Saturn as the dark father and Neptune as the mother that gives you sugar when no one's looking. I mean, the mother's yes and the father's no, or vice versa, right? A lot of times. So you have this kind of yes-no. But when Saturn and Neptune come together as spiritual and material values coming together, the sword and the cup of the Holy Grail come together. And Jupiter and Uranus are supporting this with the fashion and with the masses of the audience of people and technology. And you have Mars-Uranus for craziness and accidents. That's true. Maybe I'll comment on that at another point. But I like the idea that something very spiritual could take place at that time. These next 3 years are make it and break it for the world. And this idea of when Saturn and Neptune goes into Aries versus these other planets in Pisces and surrounded by the Pluto-Uranus, and you have the Jupiter in ascending sign trining Venus and Mercury, really, but trining Venus pretty strongly. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of love coming out in the world these days. That is really, really incredible. Okay, so let me get my tea, and I'll be back to you momentarily because I want to say some more. So this Jupiter Uranus in April with that Mars midpointing the Saturn Neptune, it might give us an insight into what's going to happen in 2026 or even 2025, 27 with the Saturn conjunct Neptune. And the reason I say that is there's a lot of reasons, actually. I mean, you can think of like the Saturn Neptune. It was in Capricorn during the 1666 Great Plague and then the Great Fire of London, kind of a cleansing, purification of too many people on the planet. Although, it could be like impotency, a certain amount of like Neptune aspects can produce impotent. I read this article about how this prominent economist was predicting that men who have given up on sex and don't want any kids are going to bring a downfall in the prices of houses because there won't be, but between infertility and people birthing too many babies with their sperm, they're giving their sperm and birthing tons of 1,000 babies or some crazy thing. And then people that are confused about the traditional sexuality or trying to experiment with other forms, and so they're not going to have babies. It's going to be a wild time. And the Saturn Neptune in history has been associated with illness, epidemic, plague. And so when we have in February 2026, the Saturn Neptune, some people are worried about that, or that Saturn has laws that need to be made to protect people. I mean, I think there's a higher and lower octave to these things. And all the planets in my book, Astrological Aspects of the Art, and even in my tarot book, the Hermetic Rosicrucian Grail Tarot, I argue that there's a higher and lower octave to the planets and the tarot cards, and that it's up to us to discover this higher octave of virtue and nobility and the spiritual aristocrat, not the materialistic one, the spiritual athlete, not the materialistic one. You think of the Olympics that were originally long ago on the graveyard, so that the gods above would notice and redeem the dead, and that the people that were doing the great feats of gymnastics were trying to get the attention of the gods to go on a great calling and destiny to awaken the earth in some new progressive way. I mean, that'd be... So Saturn's karma, and Neptune is the ideal dream. Saturn's like the father and the mother. So is it going to be the higher octave of the father principle of being able to sit still, and then when you get up, you get work done, and you defend the weak, and the king doesn't go to war unless we all go to war to protect nature and each other and the little ones, and the great mother doesn't mother you and feed you false sweetness, but the sweetness of the elixir of insight and spiritual virtue and cleanliness of mind and body and soul, I mean, these are the archetypal images that everybody's so quick to throw away because of their pride and their egotism of their ego that's brandishing a sword that can't grow things in the garden. It's not a garden tool. We need to turn the guns into garden tools, all the guns. So science and religion may have their problems here, or do we resolve those problems? Or are we heading for zombie roboton, non-evolved heart consciousness and dissolving boundaries, making more walls, materializations out of apparent nothing that cause pollution, a nice form but nothing inside that has any meaning of personal warmth, love, compassion, wisdom, ideals, right? There's a struggle to harmonize the ideal and the spiritual with matters at hand. The physical, material world needs to awaken to its relationship with all life. And that is part of what's going on. So, so did I talk about everything I wanted to talk about? Let me see. I wanted to talk about the Jupiter Uranus. I talked about all the signs of the zodiac and wherever they are in your houses, but what they probably will be doing to you. And the Mercury goes direct on the 25th, and it should become clearer. And then we have the Mars and Neptune on the 29th. And so that weekend of the 27th, 28th, 29th, you got to be careful there, because you could be pursuing your ideals and your dreams and manifesting your destiny, or you could be losing sight of the true ground. And where people with that Mars, Neptune, and then the Moon, Pluto on the 30th, and Mars going into Aries, we're going to have a real taste of the problems we're going to face for the next 3 years, or the spiritual potentials, And this Saturn, Neptune, it was around 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, and Tiananmen Square thing, it was during that time. Yeah, the moon landing. There's a lot of crazy stuff associated, student revolts, with different aspects that we're going through. So May 1st is a Venus square Pluto. Who do you love? Do you love a person enough that you want them to be happy with or without you? Do you love them so they could find themselves in the world? Or do you love them only on conditions? It's barter love, mutual masturbation love, love that we join up for work to achieve some purpose or goal of money or house or something. Is it just a spiritual relationship that doesn't have anything to do with money, the opposite extreme? Or our spirit and ideals and higher workings, are they working together? Maybe you'll find out by May 4th, when the moon conjuncts Neptune and Mars. Maybe you'll find out what doesn't work on the 1st of May. Venus square Pluto, though, it's good for trying to get into the ground those first days of May. And here's a little secret. When the moon conjuncts Uranus and Jupiter on May 8th, and the new moon is May 7th at 18 Taurus, I think that's when you're going to see more of the effect of the Jupiter-Uranus. What the Jupiter-Uranus is doing now is really going to make itself known on that new moon on the 7th of May and the 8th, and then when the sun conjuncts Uranus on the 13th of May, and when the moon squares Uranus, on the 15th, I know it sounds crazy, but I think that's what's going to happen. And then the Venus-Uranus and the sun conjunct Jupiter on the 18th of May, that whole weekend there, that whole time period from the 7th of May to the full moon on the 23rd is loaded. Like there's a Jupiter sextile Neptune on that full moon. I think June is the whole month is loaded with these great aspects for breakthroughs. By the end of May, you'll have a real confrontation with reality and truth, or you'll be riding the surf on a beautiful wave of where it's at and where it's going. And the comet is closest to Earth, the 12P Pons Brooks, on the 2nd of June. June's going to be like a wild time too, Jupiter trine Pluto. I know my friend Ray Merriman mentioned he mentioned somewhere recently, I heard him talk about the Jupiter square Saturn, and he was wondering if the markets were going to fall. And I think that's more toward the end of July or into August, but I'll check. You can check yourself. He thought that might be a crucial time. But I think it's a pretty rough time on June 11th when Mars squares Pluto. That's when, and Mercury squares Saturn on the 12th. So that's a rough time for stormy weather and difficulties. The 9th with the Sun square Saturn, and the 11th and 12th. That mid-June part is going to be a disruptor factor to this beautiful month we're going to have. Although it's a little bit dreamy on the 20th with the Sun square Neptune. There's always these forces that are contrary, And I think it was Gurdjieff that thought that, said some amazing thing, that human beings had influenced the planets to become like bad guys sometimes, when they were never meant to be. They were meant to be virtues. A long time ago, I wrote an article for the Theosophical Society magazine, a long time ago, on the Prajna Paramitas. Jupiter squares Saturn on August the 19th. That's going to be crazy in August. That's another crazy thing, but we'll talk about that later. So I probably said too much already, but Gurdjieff talks about how the human beings have made wrong decisions. A lot of the difficult things that are happening to the masses of people, like when you destroy the ecology and force your will, like in Dubai, they force their will. They have like air conditioning under the sand so you don't burn your skin. They have snow slopes. They're forcing their desires onto Mother Nature. And these floods are a reaction to that. I think a lot of the collective karma we're experiencing, where groups of people suffer some nature catastrophe or some man-made catastrophe, this is a lot to do with decisions in the past in history that were wrong moves, But that's a whole conversation. If you want to really have a base for understanding what I'm talking about, read Dane Ruger and Mark Edmund Jones, Alan Leal, these early theosophy. I met Dane Ruger at the 100-year celebration of the Theosophical Society in New York. And he ended up coming to my house a few times, and we brought him in for talks. And Ray Merriman and I teamed up on one thing and had a big seminar where he was at for a week or something, one of the universities. Forget if it was Michigan State or U of M, or Columbia College. There used to be some pretty big seminars we used to put on with a group of friends. And but I met him originally. I'm the guy who kind of hooked him up and hung out with him. And he was at my house for 11 days with his wife, running around doing poetry and talking about the philosophy of what is time and playing hide and seek with his lady. It was kind of cute. So we want to be able to play. We want to be able to work with work that's honorable, that is very healing to ourselves and the world around us. And we want to try to raise the planet's octave up. That what if our inner core and our deepest feelings and thinking create the weather? Is it possible to hit higher octaves with the planets so that bad things don't have to happen? And I think that more and more it's our presence, our divine virtue of stillness, present for every heart on this planet, how we can be present in our day-to-day becomings and workings and doings, and yet have a sense of the more eternal, that we're acting as if we're living into a 100-year period or a 1,000-year period or more. You could say that whenever Saturn hits, it's talking about a 30-year cycle, and maybe a 30-year cycle before and after. When we have Uranus aspects, we're talking about an 84-year cycle with a 12-year cycle. The elder wisdom with a young person, helping them. The young person enthusiastically keeping the old person awake. I don't know, but it's another way of looking at it. It's good to have other ways to look at it so we're not frozen like a deer in the headlights of crass materialism. If you don't have an inner wealth, the outer world is very intimidating. And if you want to understand astrology, go to all the best astrologers. Listen to them all, They all have something that's very unique. I already mentioned a number of astrologers, but there's many others that are really great. I like the astrologers that, like Psyche and Cosmos. You can get a really intellectual side of astrology, right? And, but I think that the whole idea of don't look back, like Lot is leaving with his wife and God's going to destroy the city, and God said, just don't look back until you're out of it. And, he looks back and his wife doesn't get to go out with him or something. Or Orpheus plays beautiful music and has a poetic imagination, and he goes to hell, Hades, and redeems, gets them to let go of his wife, his lover, his beloved Eurydice. And and he's not to look back at her until they're out. And he's getting to the top and he's about to go out and he looks back. Now, it's not as simple as just not looking back, like Don't Look Back, like Bob Dylan's song. It really is, don't look to the past to go into the light of the future. Don't look at the dark and your negative. You can't find, like when you look at the dark and you search all over the dark at night, you look all in the dark until you turn a light on. There's no light. You can't find the light in the dark. You have to have something new happen. And that's why I run the Mayflower Bookshop and sell books online too. And I write books and I have these lectures and talks. I'm trying to help you to have greater ideas. And I may or may not do well at explaining it, but if I turn you on to it and you go look for yourself and see for yourself, feel for yourself, see if there's some kind of way of thinking and spiritualizing your life that make it sacred and magical and mystical, and you have a union and communion with all life around you, and yet you can be one step removed from everything so you don't go crazy, and you have the silence and the stillness and the sacred. I think the silence is the sacred womb of the Great Mother. Sophia is the silence of God. The divine feminine is the silence of God. It's also the warrior, spiritual warrior Artemis. An angel warrioress. And it's also Mary Magdalene. There's a triple goddess. Cara Dwynne had a triple receptivity and a triple cauldron and a triple grail. Thinking, feeling, willing. That represents the Atma Buddha Manas, the Brahma Vishnu Shiva, the Osiris Isis Horus, the Father, Mind, Holy Mother. Not the Father, Son, Holy Ghost. The feminine is not a ghost. I suppose we could argue it's a holistic system. Gaia. Okay, so I'm saying too much. This is Robert Thibodeau, Mayflower Bookshop, sharing ideas and thoughts I had. I'm going to try to do another one soon on other things that are happening these next 3 years, but this might get you through a little bit of time. The planets are the lords of karma. They're Prajna Paramitas in the voice of the silence. They're the virtues that awaken the chakras and protect the chakras from just not having open doors. They're guardians, sacred guardians. There's the lesser guardian and the greater guardian, but there's the middle earth, the guardians of the true nature of what it means to be human. So I hope that you've gained something out of this. Share it with friends. Subscribe. Feel free to donate to support research and time and energy and computers and books. And and one way you can support me is to buy my books and share the knowledge. So bless your heart. I'm drinking kakicha tea. And springtime is here, and there's lots of flowers starting to appear. There's still a chill in the air, and the world's crazy. But we're going to be sane. We're going to be holy. We're going to be still. We're going to be music. We're going to be breath and mind and heart, and a will to the good, true and beautiful. Bless your heart, wise, everything. Bye.